Hey, Holistic Hilda here. I bring you experts, experiences, and epic adventures to boost your health. Today my guest is an anthropologist from Washington College. His name is Dr. Bill Schindler. Not only does he have a head knowledge of ancestral wisdom, but he has lived it out. You guys, he was one of the stars of the amazing, what is it called? I don't remember the name of the show, but you've got to check it out. Anyway, Dr. Bill Schindler was one of the stars of the Amazing Human Race series on National Geographic. Anyway, I think that's the name of it. He's actually lived out the various eras of humanity. And so what we talk about today is something he's lived out and is living out today, not just on the show, but every day. Nose to tail eating. What does that mean? Why does it matter? How can we be less wasteful and get more nutrients? It was an amazing conversation, and it ends with something surprising, a conclusion that I came to that I did not expect until we started talking. So check out our conversation, which we held at the Eastern Shore Food Lab just a little bit ago. So Bill, thank you for joining my channel.
It's my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Oh, I'm so excited. You guys, this man is the real deal. Like, he knows how to get his own food. He takes it from procuring it, hunting it, to processing it, to preparing it for his family. Isn't that right, Bill?
I do my best. Yeah, certainly. My focus is on connection. That idea of connecting people with their food has driven, sometimes consciously and a lot of times unconsciously, what I do and the way I approach all of it. So the idea for what I think is, the modern food system is an absolute complete failure. And you've heard me say this before, but the reason we're in the state that we're in now is because we're so disconnected from our food. And what I'm working to do is reconnect people with their food, and there's a lot of ways to do that. And I think all of us are doing that at some level. So, as a prehistoric archaeologist, one of the things that I'm trying to do is connect people with our ancestral foodways, and especially those really, really ancient ones, stemming back at least 3.5 million years. But the other piece that's incredibly important is connecting directly with your food and where it comes from. So that's where I'm very interested in foraging and hunting and butchering at home and all of those things that provide that visceral connection to the world around us. One of the things that's really cool about our hunter-gatherer ancestors and the way that they approach food and how that impacted all of their life is that they saw the direct consequences of their action. If they over-harvested or over-hunted or treated a resource badly, not only did they see how it felt for themselves and their own health, but they also saw the impact on the environment. And when we're so disconnected, we make decisions at a grocery store, but maybe if we're connected with our food and our health, we see how it impacts our own bodies, but we never see that ultimate impact on the environment. So by reconnecting people with, hands-on getting and processing their food, I feel that we're also, I'm also reconnecting them with that ability to see what the consequences of their actions in the environment are.
And I think a lot of us right now are just trying to get reacquainted with real food. Like, I might not go out and hunt or, process my own animal, but if I can become more familiar with all the things I can enjoy from, let's say, one goose,
sure,
right? That's a step in the right direction. So tell everybody watching what you were telling me about goose hunting in this area and what you learned when you went to the processor.
Okay, great. Yeah. So remember, when I make broad generalizations, there are broad generalizations. They're not speaking for all the hunters and chefs and cook. But in general, what happens quite a bit, unfortunately, in the modern world, in the hunting world, is that we're not using the entirety of the animal when we kill it. Now, let me say a few things very quickly. I grew up hunting. I've been hunting since I could walk at some level, and I've been hunting on my own since I was 10. And I've always had a problem with the idea that we call hunting a sport. I don't think it's any. I think hunting and sport, those words should never come together, and I think it really devalues what hunting can really provide. To me, hunting is a way to fully connect with your food, with your environment, where it comes from, with the people you're hunting with. For me, I grew up hunting with my father. It's a very special time for us to spend time together. And when you hunt, in my mind, the right way, the act of hunting isn't the moment that you pull the trigger or that you let fly the arrow, right? The act of hunting begins months ahead of time, right? Where you're understanding animal behavior patterns. You're in the woods scouting things out. You're maybe building a stand. You know, all of the lead up. Then you're actually in the act of hunting. There's a second where you actually kill the animal, and then the real work begins, right? For most of us, when we think about hunting, it's we pulled the trigger, we've hunted, and our time is done. We bring animals to the processor. And this is the problem with that. The way that we think about wild animals as food has been really influenced by the way that we think of domesticated animals as food, and that's strongly influenced by the farming industry and the butchering industry and the grocery store industry and the modern food world in general. The average in the United States today, we eat approximately 55% of a pig by weight and 50% of a cow by weight. So if you weighed the animal when it killed it, the part that ends up in the grocery store in those neat little packages is about half the animal.
Just half, wow.
So that influences the way we look at these animals, and it carries over into the way that the new generation of hunters are looking at the animals that they kill in the field. When you look at indigenous groups around the world in the past, and even still today, groups like the Sami in northern Scandinavia, they will eat upwards of 95 and above % of the animal, right? So from an ethical level, I've never in my life experienced pleasure killing an animal, but I experience, to me it's a way to connect. To me it's a responsibility, but I experience great pleasure and joy in taking that animal and doing everything that I can to make the most of that animal to nourish myself and my family. That's where I find the pleasure. That's where I find the enjoyment and the fulfillment. So to take an animal and kill it and eat half or less, I have no business. That doesn't interest me at all. Right. But to take that animal and use the entirety of it for food and also for tools and other things we can talk about, that I find fulfilling. That I find nourishing for my body and my soul. So half the animal. The other problem is, even if you can grasp what I'm saying, is okay. Yeah. Half this animal dies. Half of it goes to food. Half of it either goes to waste or for other things. Right. I get that. If you can get that, you might then think, well, okay, then half the calories are gone. No. Half the nutrition is gone. No, the problem is this. The flesh of an animal is a lot more nutrient dense than fruits or vegetables, but it's the least nutrient dense part of an animal. So we're not throwing away half the nutrition. We're throwing away much more than half the nutrition that animal could provide. Right?
And this is a really important point, you guys, because we think we want to nourish ourselves well, and we think about just how much meat consumption we take in, but we're not thinking about how the organ meats, the other parts, as he's referring to, of the animal can nourish us in a deeper way, and it's more respectful, like you said, of the animal and of the environment. We're not being wasteful. So yeah, continue. That's a great point.
So eating completely nose to tail has a certainly an ancestral diet relevance to it. People in the thing that I like to say, unfortunately today, people who do eat meat, many of us who consider ourselves great meat eaters eat 3 animals, right? We eat cows, we eat chickens, and we eat pigs.
Guilty.
And we often eat the same cuts from that animal all the time. Like if we eat chicken, we only eat chicken breast. Or if we eat pork loin. And, if we take a step back from ourselves and say, okay, how does that match up with the way our ancestors ate? Well, who would kill an animal and take a small piece of it and leave the rest of it to rot away? In fact, when we do see parts of animals being left behind by both predators and by human hunters, the parts that are left behind, if any, is actually the meat. The part that's always eaten are the organs, the blood, the fat, the parts
that's
of
right.
it. Right.
The jaguar is going to go after the zebra heart or whatever. I don't even know if those animals are in the same place at the same time. But the point is, they're going after those organs and leaving the muscle meat for the scavenger birds or what have you, right?
And we do the exact opposite today, right?
So weird.
So that's certainly a huge problem, and it doesn't make sense from an ancestral diet approach. From a nutritional approach, again, the most nutrients that are available in the most accessible form, which is key, are the organs, the blood, and the fat. So one thing, this not that we're talking about much with plants today, and plants I do believe play a large role in a healthy human diet, but I like to say animals can hurt you or kill you when they're alive, plants can hurt you or kill you when they're dead. And I know that sounds strange.
No,
but
it's so interesting. Let that sink in for a second. So animals can hurt and kill you when they're alive. Like when you're going after them, they'll go after you with their claws or their teeth. But plants won't do anything when you're trying to kill them, but they'll hurt you once they're
dead. Right? So animals are strong, they have teeth, they have antlers, they have claws, whatever, and they can hurt you or maim you when they're alive. So the technologies that we've developed over millennia, right, or for millions of years really, we started hunting about 2 million years ago, were to overcome our physical limitations to be able to hunt at a distance and kill these animals that could hurt us. Plants, on the other hand, don't move, so they fight the outside world with chemical defenses, oxalates, lectins, phytates, glycoalkaloids, all those sorts of things. So most of the technologies we developed prior to agriculture that had to do with plants were how to overcome these toxins and detoxify them and make them safe for our body and make those nutrients that were locked up inside of it accessible to our body. The cool thing with animals is that for most animals, once we've killed them, once we've overcome these limitations and killed an animal and opened it, it is nutrition that's just completely accessible to our bodies waiting for us. We don't even have to cook most of it.
Necessarily, that's right.
Right. So from a safety level, if it's fresh, no. And from a nutritional level, meat, it has been a lot of evidence that suggests that red meat is difficult for the human body to derive the maximum amount of nutrition from unless it's slightly processed in some way. And Richard Wrangham from Harvard has done a lot of work here. So chopping, grinding, slicing helps. Some degree of cooking helps. And it's not from a safety perspective. It's how do I get the most amount of nutrition from that meat in the right places in my body. But organs are something different. Organs and fat and blood, those things in a raw state or a cooked state can deliver an incredible amount of nutrition to us without much work at all. And that's awesome.
That is awesome.
So nutritionally it makes sense. Ethically it makes sense, right? From a sustainability level it makes sense. So, what I'm telling you right now is if we changed our approach to animals immediately overnight with the animals we're already raising, we could more than double the amount of nutrition that comes out of the animals that are already there. Let that sink in. In a conversation where we're talking about food security and sustainability, nutrition, and feeding a growing population, with just a mindset change, we can more than double the amount of nutrition coming out of an animal, and that nutrition, the stuff that we're missing, is of higher quality. That's incredible, right? So, and then finally, from a financial standpoint, how about those small farmers who are doing incredible things with their animals, and they can now have a market for more than half of that animal, right? Across the board, it makes sense. The problem is, and what I think we're going to talk about is, right, if you are in a commercial kitchen or if you're at a butcher, this all makes sense and you can do all these things, but how do you take that approach and apply it in your home kitchen, right? That's the thing that's hard for people to maybe understand.
Yeah, and I think in our culture we've become squeamish about the kind of awful, the parts of the animal that we're not used to eating anymore, that we've kind of moved away from. So I think there's a few hurdles we have to overcome.
There is, and one of the big ones is the mindset change.
Absolutely.
So one thing for everybody to understand is when the animal is dead and the heart is not beating anymore, there is not blood rushing through any veins, right? So this is not inherently a bloody process. So it's not. It's actually a much cleaner process. Now, if you've harvested the animal yourself in the field, there's some things to get around there, obviously, depending on how the animal had killed. But once you're past that point, what you would get from the grocery store, what you would get from the butcher, you're not talking about blood that's gushing on your countertops or getting on your floor. It's not that at all. If it's fresh, there's not a smell component, and if it's fresh and you approach it the right way, the flavor is absolutely incredible. Texture is something that's different for us, right? Texture of organ meats, for many of them, are different than what we're used to with flesh or with meat. So that's something we need to overcome slightly. The flavors are definitely stronger, but the cool thing is you can do these things in your house. It's accessible, and the response from your body is absolutely incredible. These are satiating foods. These are foods that you feel full from when you're done creating.
It's so amazing. And as you're talking, I'm thinking, Am I going to end up hunting with you?
I hope so.
I think I am, you guys, because I want to be that connected. I don't want to be as disconnected as I am. But for most of us, you might just be thinking, okay, I'm going to try some of these different parts of the animal. And if you're not going to hunt, I know I can get them from my local farm.
Sure.
And like you said, it's a boon to the farmer, but it's good for our family's health, and maybe that's a step in the right direction.
It is. Oh, absolutely.
What organ meat did you start with when you first tried it? Or was
I started with liver because I absolutely love pate. Now listen, for any of you that love pate, great place to start. For any of you who don't love pate, you've probably not had good pate. Because pate done well is absolutely incredible. It's probably the most easily accessible one, really.
And with chicken livers, which don't have as strong a flavor as
Right.
lamb liver or some other kind of liver. So, and haven't I been with you when you made it? Didn't you make it?
Yeah, we did it
last
for
time I
that
was
class,
here?
for the chicken butchering class.
Right, it's
yeah.
not hard.
Yeah.
So, okay, but let's go back. We never made it to the goose story.
Oh, sorry. I'm sorry.
That's
I got
okay.
off tangent. That's my fault. Okay, so we live here on the eastern shore of Maryland in we're a major flyway for migratory birds, including Canadian geese. So we're a big Canadian. I grew up in New Jersey hunting, and in New Jersey growing up, if you hunted, everybody deer hunted, and some people might have hunted for geese and ducks. And when I came down here, it was like the exact opposite. Everybody who hunts here hunts for geese and ducks, and some people deer hunt.
Oh, that's funny.
It was a big shift. But anyhow,
Yeah.
goose hunting is huge here. A lot of people come here. It's a destination for goose hunting. There's game processors in the area that will take your geese and process them for you, which is all that's great.
Sure.
One of the problems is that many of the people who hunt geese, and it's one of the almost new traditions, is that you kill the goose and you just breast the goose, which means the only part that you take from the animal is the breast of the geese. Now, I need to step back very quickly, and it's easy to criticize something like that from the outside and say, okay, well, what are these hunters thinking?
Yeah.
Now, but when you get into the trenches and it's in more context, a lot of the traditions around hunting are passed on generation to generation to generation. A lot of it is based on time. A lot of it's based on economics. A lot of it's based on all sorts of different things. So the way these different trends in hunting and those sorts of things in general go, it's not simple, right? There's a lot of factors into it, and I don't believe there are hardly any hunters out there that are out there to be wasteful. That's
No.
not what I'm suggesting.
No.
But we're talking about taking a human in a modern context who, we're taught the norm is to go to the grocery store, right? And most of us are not brought up living outside all the time and foraging and hunting and making bows. And so, to take that step into the world of hunting, you're brought into it by somebody. Usually it's a family member, a father, a grandfather, mother, grandmother, whatever. And that person, the way that they convey the information to you about doing something that is so inherently human, but today is so strange.
So strange.
That's where you get all your information.
Right.
And there's so many things to overcome and learn when you're hunting. Gun safety is one, and whatever the new game laws are for this year, and all sorts of things. That if there isn't the full, I'm going to take the entire animal approach there, it's not because anybody's doing it intentionally. It's because that's just whatever happened in
They're
in
like,
that
my
month.
father
Right.
would just breast the geese, so that's what I'm doing.
Right.
Only I don't have time to do it myself, so I'm just going to take it to the processor.
Absolutely.
Right.
So this is it's much more complicated is the point.
Right.
And I'm not trying to demonize anything or
No.
anybody. What I'm trying to suggest is an alternative approach that we need to get back to. So with that said, one of the traditions now is you kill the goose, and real quick, the feathers on the chest are very easy to remove. So you could pluck them, pluck that part of it in just a few minutes, and with a knife take out the breast meat. It's the same way you would take the breast off of a chicken in minutes. And the people that are doing this, the mindset is that's the food from the goose. The same way that all of us go to the grocery store and take the pork loin and say that's the edible part of a pig or the chops. So it's actually no different than us not eating the liver from this or the right. So that's taken. Unfortunately, that also results in the goose getting thrown, the rest of the goose getting thrown away. So let me tell you what's missing from that, the food that's missing. First off, I think, as far as meat is concerned, the breast, especially on an older goose, if you forced me to leave something behind, it would be the breast.
Really?
Absolutely. The legs, some of you who like chicken legs more than chicken breasts can understand why you would want the same thing on a goose. I always confit the legs. We can talk about it in a minute. But the legs are incredible. Goose fat is incredible. Goose skin is incredible. The bones make an absolutely gorgeous bone broth. Inside of the animal, you have the blood is difficult to collect in a hunting situation, but a lot of people do stuff with blood. The liver, goose liver pate is the gold standard. It's absolutely fantastic. So goose liver pate, the hearts are fantastic, and even, believe it or not, the gizzards cooked properly are wonderful. Slow cooked. So the gizzards are the part. They're these really strong muscles. They eat the rocks are in there, and they grind the food. So they work all the time. So they're really hard, but a very slow cook. Sous vide is fantastic for it. You can cook those. So you're missing. You can use the tongues. You can use the wing tips. All of it. The feet. You can add the legs to the stock. Wonderful. So those are all the things that's missing in that situation where they're just breasted. The problem is, in some cases, we're 1 or 2 generations away from knowing what to do with that rest of the animal.
Yeah.
And that whole thing, that whole approach is being reinforced by the way most of the United States is approaching chickens. Like, if you're going to eat meat and you're going to be healthy, you're going to eat chicken. And if you're going to eat chicken and you're going to be healthy, you eat the chicken breast. So it's reinforced over and over again, right? And there's no information out there to help reconnect this. So even at the butcher, not far from here, great guy. He's providing a wonderful service to people. You come, you kill some geese or ducks, you bring them to him, and the question is, what do you want? Do you want the whole bird or you want the breasts? And the difference is like $2. Okay. So I forget the exact price, but I think it's $4 for the breast or $6 for the whole bird. And even with that $2, I don't know if it's the $2 barrier or the mental barrier that the breast is the right part to eat, the rest isn't a big deal. Again, reinforced by everything else around us. Most of the time it's just the breast, and the rest of the animal, because the way it's a migratory bird. There's federal game laws surrounding it. They can't sell the rest of that bird. They have to throw it away.
That's crazy. I wonder what would happen if they switched it and said $6 for the breast and $4 for the whole bird.
You know what? That's actually brilliant.
Talk to them about that. No kidding, right? Because then they'd make more money if people want the breast. I don't know.
That's the best thing I've heard in a long time. The only other, but then there's another problem, right? So the other problem is, and let me just preface this very quickly. So you bring this bird in, and let me explain the situation. You bring it into this big room, and there's some equipment around, some sinks and some other things. So you bring the bird in, you fill out the tags with your license and all this, and then you say, okay, what do you want? And the first thing that they do is they take the bird, and they have one machine with this rotating thing with these rubber fingers on it for geese, and one for ducks, because the feathers that come off, so it rips the feather, it takes the feathers off the skin.
Yes, like instead of people plucking by hand, it's this automatic thing.
Right, and the goose feathers they can sell for pillows and stuff. So that goes into one container, and then the ducks, I don't know what the other feathers there, that goes in another place. So they do that, and then they cut off the head, they cut off the wingtips, they cut off the legs. Then they open up the bird and take out the guts, which most people typically get thrown away. And then they take the bird, they wash it, and they wrap it up. So what you leave with, what you have the opportunity to leave with for $2 extra, looks like a chicken or a turkey from a grocery store. Done. You could, if you wanted to, also leave with the gizzard and the heart and the liver and the legs, right? And the neck, which is great for stuffing sausage, all kinds of things. So that's the situation. And even with that, people aren't bringing it. So your suggestion is great, but then you're still left with giving birds to whole birds and organs to somebody who might not know what to do with it in the kitchen, and you might end up with that same sort of waste. So what we're working on, in fact, I'm filming a video this weekend on, is not only how to process the geese yourselves, but also what to do with those geese, how to make that pate, how to deal with the gizzards, how to deal with the heart, how to deal with the other pieces of it, how to make the right stock from it, and then that. And what I'm hoping to do is to show people that you can do this entirely in your own kitchen. Well, you pluck it outside, but the rest of it is in your own kitchen. It's not a huge time drain.
Right.
I mean, it's almost like, I forget the statistic, but the average amount of time that you push a shopping cart in a store the amount of distance that you push it, and then you walk outside and you can't push it the extra 100 feet to put it into the thing, right? It's almost like nobody has any problem hunting for an entire day, but the idea that you might have to spend a full 45 minutes or an hour processing, the animal it's real. I find a correlation there.
Yeah.
But I think part of it is just that lack of. I'm not entirely sure how to do this myself. The learning of it might take more time than I have to invest, and I don't even know if it's going to turn out that good. So that's what I'm trying to do is provide that sort of connection there. And you know what? The other thing is, we eat farm meat. We eat beef, we eat pork, we eat chicken, certainly some turkey, and we don't hunt for all of our meat. We hunt for a lot of our meat, and we forage for a lot of our vegetables. But we also purchase vegetables. But it's not. I'm not trying to suggest that everybody needs to become a full-blown hunter-gatherer for all their food. It's not possible time-wise. It's not possible resource-wise. But what I am suggesting is even going hunting once a year, or foraging once a year, or fishing once a year can help provide that much-needed connection that's not in our daily lives.
Oh, I like that challenge, because you think once a year I can do that.
Absolutely.
And I'm going to do that. So actually 2020 is going to be the year of trying something new.
Okay, you'll hunt here with us.
Yeah, but should I hunt, fish, or forage? Foraging is easier, right?
Foraging. The cool thing about foraging is that you can do it literally anywhere you are. I think I've told you before, but one of my favorite foraging tours that I lead every year is in the middle of Washington, D.C. It's an urban foraging tour.
Oh my gosh, sign me up for that one.
All right, that'll be in May, I believe, at the Hill Center in D.C.
I'll be here.
But the other thing about foraging is most of the plants, diversity and accessibility of wild plants that you can eat are not in the middle of the woods. They're not in the middle of a field. They're in those areas that are what we call ecotones, where two different environments come together. So a field against the woods, or a vacant lot against the building, or a sidewalk against the field. Those are the areas, the cracks of the sidewalk. Those areas are where all this food is. So in fact, if you walked into the middle of the woods, you'd be hard pressed to find an edible plant, because the canopy where the trees are, there's not much growing at your feet. It's the edges. And so every one of us have access to a park, or cracks in the sidewalk, or a vacant lot. And it's a wonderful way to, smell, taste, feel, seasonality, nutrition, connect. We've been gatherers for millions of years, well before we were even hunters. So it's the way we've always fed ourselves up until recently. So it's an amazing way to reconnect, and it's very accessible. We can do it in our backyards.
That's so cool. I'm excited. So you guys, if you want to try something new this year, you can try hunting, fishing, or foraging even just once. That's our little challenge to you. Or just include an odd part of the animal in your diet, and you're kind of just remembering you're following the steps of our ancestors, and you're also nourishing your body deeply. So these are great challenges, Bill. I'm excited.
All that's fantastic. And I think one other thing we could add to it is, one of the things that...
I was like wrapping it all up in a bow.
I'm sorry, last one.
It's totally good.
Real quick, I promise. Is, to add to that challenge, is if you could take one more step closer to the source of your food. Foraging, hunting, fishing is fantastic. Butchering at home is fantastic. But if you eat chicken breast from the store, then maybe buy the whole chicken. Mm-hmm. If you buy a whole chicken from the store, then maybe go to the farm and meet the farmer and buy the chicken at the farm, directly from the farm. Or if you're doing that already, then maybe take the step and go hunting. But even that one step is an incredible step. It's a meaningful step, and it's a nourishing step.
Wow. All right, I'm hungry for lunch. We'll go get nourished. Thanks so much for your time, Bill.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Thanks for watching, you guys. Let me know what you thought of this conversation and of Bill Schindler. I think he's amazing. And click on subscribe, the notification bell, there are all these things so that you can stay abreast of what's coming out on the Holistic Hilda YouTube channel. Also, until the end of the month, there's still early bird pricing for the Ecuador trip. If you're like, what's she talking about? April 1st to the 8th, I'm going to Ecuador. It is an ancestral wisdom tour, and I invite you to go with me. I have taken many trips around the world, to Australia, Kenya, Peru. This is the first time I'm taking people with me. I want people like you who are like-minded, who care about their health, and want to kind of put their feet on the ground and put it into practice, because we will do that. We will do grounding, literally. We'll catch the morning sunrise and be a part of ancient ceremonies that have been enjoyed by people for millennia. We'll eat traditional foods and have many amazing experiences. So join me, click on the link below to find out more about it, and act fast because there's only room for 12 people. Come along with me, it's gonna be great. And thanks for watching.